So we got 31 stab wounds.
What was it?
Ice pick.
Basic Instinct is a 1992 noe-noir erotic thriller written by Joe Estroz and directed by Paul Verhoeven. It stars Michael Douglas, Sharon Stone, George Dzundza, Jean Triplehorn, Denis, Arndt, and Leilani Sarelle. The film follows San Francisco detective Nick Kieran investigating the brutal murder of a famous rock star, the only suspect to which is a renowned crime author, Catherine Trammell, with whom Kieran steadily becomes obsessed and begins to have an intense and torrid affair.
I'd like to speak to Miss Catherine Trammell, please.
Joe Estroz wrote the screenplay in the 1980s in a time span of 10 days while listening to the Rolling Stones non-stop without even having a story outline. The script became the subject of a bidding war between major studios until it was eventually purchased for $3 million by Carol Cove Pictures Incorporated, an American independent film studio founded by Mario Casar and Andrew Vanya, which existed from 1978 to 1995. Estroz is also known for having written scripts for other major films such as Flashdance, released in 1983, and Jagged Edge, released in 1987. Dutch director Paul Verhoeven, assigned to helm the film, recommended changes to the script which Estroz disagreed with. One change was to add a lesbian sex scene which Estroz openly described as exploitive. Another change made at the behest of Michael Douglas included beefing up the character of Nick Kieran to make him seem less wimpy. Verhoeven was determined to make the changes and refused to budge. Estroz and the film's then producer Erwin Winkler left the production after failing to reach an agreement. At the advice of Verhoeven, Gary Goldman was promptly hired to rewrite the script in 4 drafts, adding new scenes as well as incorporating the desired changes. After the 4th draft was completed, Verhoeven began realizing his proposals were not going to work. He would go on to admit they were undramatic and stupid. By the 5th draft, the script had reverted back to Estroz's original, with only a few minor visual and dialogue changes having been made. After admitting his error, Verhoeven publicly apologized to Estroz. Estroz in turn also admitted that for a director to apologize for his mistake was a rare thing in Hollywood. In the end, Joe Estroz received sole writing credit for the script. Believing that taking the lead role in the film might be risking damage to his career, Michael Douglas wanted an A-list actress to play the part of Catherine Trammell so he wouldn't be taking the risk by himself. Douglas initially recommended Kim Basinger, but she ended up declining the role. Douglas would also go on to suggest actresses like Julia Roberts, Greta Scacchi, and Meg Ryan. All 3 women turned it down. In addition, actresses who were also asked to star but declined include Michelle Pfeiffer, Gina Davis, Kathleen Turner, Kelly Lynch, Ellen Barkin, and Mariel Hemingway. Verhoeven also considered Demi Moore, until he decided to instead cast Sharon Stone, with whom he previously worked on the sci-fi action thriller Total Recall. Prior to filming Basic Instinct, Stone was relatively unknown. Her first acting role was in the 1981 horror film Deadly Blessing, and went on to appear in several TV series episodes and feature films. Her credits also included appearing alongside Carl Weathers in Action Jackson and Steven Seagal in Above the Law, as well as a more pivotal role in the erotic drama Blood and Sand. Stone never read for the part, fearing she might be disappointed. When she did read the script, she knew she was right for the role. She didn't want to call Verhoeven to ask if she could audition. In an interview with Playboy, she stated that she didn't want him to test her simply because he felt obligated. When she was asked one day to go and dub lines for a plain version of Total Recall, she wore a similar dress to the one described in the script to demonstrate to Verhoeven that she could play the part of a man-eater. The dress actually worked, and after being tested with Michael Douglas, Stone was cast. Both Michael Douglas and Paul Verhoeven treated the film like a detective novel. Verhoeven's goal was to make a modern-day Alfred Hitchcock thriller, except with a lot of explicit sexuality. The most notable trademarks of Hitchcock being a beach house filmed against the backdrop of a stormy ocean, as seen in the film Vertigo from 1958, as well as shots of a staircase. Verhoeven admitted that Hitchcock likely influenced him subconsciously when he noticed he had selected a location with a small church in the background looking almost identical to the one also seen in Vertigo. At the later stage of production, it was discovered that the script had been leaked, resulting in the gay and lesbian communities having reservations with its portrayal of bisexual characters. Esteros wanted to make the changes to appease both communities, but Verhoeven refused and insisted the film stick to its guns. As a result, Esteros distanced himself from the production a second time. The filming process in San Francisco was attended by gay and lesbian rights activists and demonstrators, with the San Francisco riot police deployed at each location daily to control the crowds. Outside the location, the protesters held up signs that said, "Honk if you love the 49ers, and honk if you love men." In addition, the protesters tried to interfere with filming by using lasers and blowing whistles. The police were in place and a restraining order was issued. Then producer Alan Marshall, who stepped in to replace Erwin Winkler, would individually pick out protesters he wanted to have arrested. This led to Marshall in turn to be placed under citizen's arrest. Eventually, it never really led to anything with the police department.
You know how she does the boyfriend? With an ice pick.
Veteran composer Jerry Goldsmith composed the score for the film, which also earned him an Academy Award as well as a Golden Globe Award. In an interview, Goldsmith said that Basic Instinct was the hardest film he had ever scored. He described it as a very convoluted story with unorthodox characters, calling it a murder mystery and not a murder mystery. Goldsmith also stated that Verhoeven had a clear idea of how the woman should be, but he had a hard time getting it because of Verhoeven pushing him. Goldsmith went on to describe the score as the best he has ever written, and calling it a true collaboration. Except for the score, professionally released songs never played a major part in the film. The only scene where source music is featured is where the characters of Kieran, Trammell, and Roxy, played by Leilani Sarelle, are seen at downtown San Francisco. The song Blue by Chicago house performer Latour, as well as Rave the Rhythm by the group Channel X. Other songs featured are Movin' On Up by Jeff Barry and Jeanette Dubois and Chris Reyes. Looking for Summer is heard during the dinner scene between Kieran and his partner Mac. The film soundtrack was also released in its entirety on 17th March 1992. In 2004, Prometheus Records issued a considerably expanded release of Goldsmith's score, featuring sections of previously omitted and alternative compositions of certain elements.
What's your new book about?
A detective. He falls for the wrong woman.
Initially, the Motion Picture Association gave Basic Instinct a commercially restrictive NC-17 rating for graphic depictions of extremely explicit violence, sexual content, and strong language. Both TriStar and Carolco then put pressure on Verhoeven to make the necessary cuts to bring it down to an R rating. Expecting that the MPA may have a problem with the nature of the sex scenes between Michael Douglas and Sharon Stone, Verhoeven shot a considerable amount of footage of the scenes, primarily alternative close-ups, medium shots, and wide shots of every shot over 5 days. In turn, this allowed Verhoeven the freedom to edit the scene down until the MPA finally gave the film an R rating. The film was subsequently released in its uncut form in various DVD and Blu-ray collector's editions over the years.
She seduces people, she manipulates people, she's evil!
The film became a controversial topic because of its graphic depiction of sexuality, violence, and rape. Members of the lesbian and bisexual group Labia protested against the film on its opening night, claiming it followed a pattern of depicting homosexuals in a negative way. Other members picketed theaters trying to dissuade people from going in to see the film, as well as carried signs that read, "Kiss my ice pick. Hollywood promotes anti-gay violence." Other signs being waved around gave away the ending. Verhoeven personally defended the group's right to protest, but heavily criticized the disruption by saying, Fascism is not in raising your voice. The true fascism is in not accepting the no. In his review, wildly renowned film critic Roger Ebert stated, "As for the allegedly offensive homosexual characters, the movie's protesters might take note of the fact that this film's heterosexuals, starting with Douglas, are equally as offensive. Still, there is a point to be made about Hollywood's unremitting insistence on typecasting homosexuals, particularly lesbians, as twisted and evil." Feminist academic and social critic Kamel Pagila denounced the gay activist protests against the film. She went on to praise Sharon Stone's performance, calling it one of the great performances by a woman in screen history, and calling Stone's character a great vamp figure like Mona Lisa. Over the years, in several interviews, Sharon Stone has claimed that before shooting the famous leg crossing scene, Paul Verhoeven asked her to take off her underwear because he thought they were too bright and reflected against the camera. Stone agreed to do so, believing her genitals would not be shown. At an early preview screening for test audiences, she discovered Verhoeven had in fact used that specific shot. Stone was furious that Verhoeven did not discuss this with her in advance, but decided to let the matter go as she felt it conformed with her character. Over the years, Verhoeven stated he did discuss the scene with Stone and told her that it was important to show Catherine's free-spirited nature and her desire to toy with people. Stone was said to have been excited about the scene, although her agents disapproved of it, believing it would damage her career. Stone then quickly changed her mind and demanded it be removed. Verhoeven openly refused. In Stone's memoir, published in 2021, she again stated she knew nothing about the shot. Verhoeven again defended himself by stating she was aware and was even invited to attend an early screening of the film. Stone confirmed she attended the screening but was shocked when she saw her crotch visible on screen and slapped Verhoeven across the face because of it. Verhoeven also added that the idea for the scene was based on a woman he knew while he was a student who did the leg crossing thing at parties on a regular basis. When his friend at the time told her they could see her vagina, she just said she knew that is why she did it. Despite the controversy, Stone and Verhoeven remain on good terms with no bad blood between them, even if they remember things differently.
Games are over.
My own interest in seeing Basic Instinct dwindled over the years, since the only scene everyone kept bringing up was the famous leg crossing scene. Yet no one ever spoke about the quality of the overall film. Fortunately, after finally seeing it, it turned out to be a compelling story of a seasoned yet not very likable detective Kieran, who finds himself being pulled into Catherine Tramel's web of seduction. The film boasts stellar performances from its two leads, and the supporting cast are equally as great. Despite the focus primarily being on Kieran and Tramell, there are no throwaway performances. Every cast member stands out in a way that is rarely seen in films today. It is also exceptionally dark, the tone is aggressively grim, and it is complemented by a very well-suited score by the great Jerry Goldsmith. However, being that this is an erotic thriller which obviously tried to push the limits of eroticism past the usual norm in mainstream cinema, it is also this very same desire to push the bar which almost threw me out of the experience. While the lead up to each of the raunchier moments is well handled so it does not feel forced and is perfectly justified, the scenes just feel too long, almost to the extent that any tension the film built up to that point dissipates and the film's pacing slows down to a crawl. While the overall narrative had me interested enough to push through to the end, each of the love scenes were only good in the first few moments, and after that, I often wished it would just move things along. In terms of recommendation, there were quite a few erotic thrillers released direct-to-video prior and following Basic Instinct. In comparison, Basic Instinct had the advantage of being made with a bigger budget, which only meant it had bigger sets and better locations. As an addition to the genre, it is hardly a standout and not the first of its kind which featured a seductive femme fatale. I also never understood the fascination with the leg crossing scene. It may feature the character Catherine not wearing any panties, but the direct-to-video variety each featured a considerable number of women not wearing any clothes. If you are looking for a taut psychological thriller with a compelling narrative, you will find it with Basic Instinct. If you are looking for an erotic thriller with a heavy dose of eroticism, you will also find just that. However, even though I would still recommend it, for me personally, it's not a film I care to ever see again. I would be less inclined to acknowledge its iconic status because of the various direct-to-video erotic films that came before it. Not that those films stood out in a special way, but everything about Basic Instinct has already been done before a few times. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out the other ones currently highlighted on screen. And if you've seen the film, kindly leave your opinions in the comments below, as they always generate an interesting dialogue. And if you want to see more content, be sure to subscribe and click the bell to stay up to date. And until the next time, have a good one.